Hey guys, thanks again for joining me today on my YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about what is a cloth pad and why you should switch. Hey guys, so I'm going to be doing more of a question and answer. These are the questions that I get asked most in my Etsy shop. I've laid out just some pretty pads here for you guys to look at, and I will be kind of referring to them throughout the question and answer. So let's just go ahead and get started. The first question is, what is a cloth pad? A cloth pad is a homemade or handmade combination of mixed materials such as your topper and then the core material and then the backer. And it's used to absorb your menstrual flow or an everyday wear panty liner or possibly incontinence. The next question that I get asked is, why switch and what are the benefits? Well, the benefits are that there's no chemicals. This is the biggest one for me. There's no chemicals in any part of the pad that we're using. The absorbency comes from the core, so there's no jelly chemicals in there to absorb any of your flow. There's no chemicals put into a cloth pad to absorb like the smell or to create odorless pads, which is funny because when I first started using cloth myself personally, I thought, well, you know, it's going to be smelly, isn't it, right? I'm going to use cloth pads, I'm going to put them in the wet bag. It's going to be really smelly because I don't have anything controlling the odor. But in fact, it was quite the opposite. I had no odor, in fact, even with my wet bag, because I leave it half open in my bathroom. It's good not to close your wet bag all the way. You want to get some airflow in there, but I didn't have any kind of odor, so it's actually the chemicals in disposables that are causing the odor. And then also saving money. You know, initially to buy your cloth pads, to buy like maybe a stash like this, is going to cost you a little bit of a chunk of money, right? A stash like this, I'm just going to roughly, would probably cost you like $70. But in the long run, you're saving hundreds of dollars a year because these pads will last you 7+ years, you know, if cared for properly every month when you're finished with your cycle. Next, how to choose the right pad for you. So this is really important because I think the initial thought is when you're new to cloth, you want to go out and you want to buy a whole bundle, or you just, you know, they're really fun and the prints are really fun and maybe a friend hooked you onto it and so you just want to buy a huge bundle. But I really suggest that you maybe try 3 or 4. Even try a few different kinds from different makers, because you might find that, you know, you like one maker for your panty liners and then you like another maker for your overnights. So it just really depends on which pad feels right for you. So you can totally go out and buy a bundle if you want. If you just can't help yourself and you're like, I don't care, I get, you know, maybe you have a situation where you can't use cloth, you can't use disposables anymore, your doctor said you're getting terrible rashes, you gotta do it, it doesn't matter. But even then, you don't want to spend $70 to $80, maybe more, and then find that the pads that you bought don't fit you well. So I would suggest just getting a couple at a time. Also, you want to think about the length. So a good way to do this is to take one of your disposable pads that you're using right now and just get yourself a ruler, and then you want to just open your disposable pad and then you want to measure. So if you're using, let's say you're using like a 12-inch, you're a really heavy bleeder and you're using a 12-inch overnight, then if you find that you're not leaking off of it and that if it does pretty well, it goes right to the center, you know, start with a 12-inch. That, you know, if you know that that's going to be like perfect for your heavy days or your overnight, and then maybe you can get away with like a 9-inch for your panty liners. But I always tell my customers a good rule of thumb is to start with anything between 9 inches to 12 inches. That seems to be like the most common size. I think other makers would agree with me. But that's why I say get a few different pads of different lengths and different absorbencies. And after the first cycle, you'll kind of know like, oh, okay, I'm going to need more heavies, and that was kind of leaking off the back, or it was coming out the side, so I need something a little heavier and I need something a little longer. So you'll just kind of get the feel. And then also what's really important is the width. So I have here just a pair of panties. And so we're just going to take the width here. And so this is the width that we're talking about, the width of your panties. But when a maker says this is a 7-inch moderate and it's a 2.5 at the snap, that means when it's snapped like so, that means this right here is the width. So if we were to measure this, that would be 2.5, and that's what this pad is listed at, is a 2.5. So that means when you go in here to look at your undies and you're like, well, I'm not really sure how wide my undies are, you're gonna look at this, and mine is just a little bit over a 2.5. So I know that when I go to find a pad for myself, I wanna find something that's around 2.5. you know, this can kind of change with depending on what kind of underwear you wear, but I know for the style underwear that I wear when I'm on my cycle, that works perfectly. And then also to talk about underwear, you want to make sure that you have underwear that is snug fitting. You don't want it to be so tight that it's really constricting you here at the legs, or you're just completely uncomfortable, because we're already kind of uncomfortable when we're on our periods, but you do want to have underwear that's not real loose so that your pad can shift this way, you know, back and forth in your underwear. So it's really important to kind of get something snug. Another thing to take into consideration is the shape of your pad. So like for instance, this is an 11.5 moderate, and you can see here the shape that it's smaller on the top and it has a wider flare on the bottom. This could be considered a back or a front bleeder. So say you're needing it for a front bleeder, so it would sit this way inside of your panties, but if you needed it for a back bleeder, you could switch it and use it here for the back. So that just means when you fold it in half, you can see how much more flare here is on the back or the front, however you'd like to use it. And then there's also more of an even, like basic round flare shape, which is what I like to make, which is it's the same on the front and the same on the back. So it's symmetrical. So you can see here when I fold it in half, it's the same. Also, exposed core versus hidden core. So here is just a hidden core. That means the core is hidden, it's down inside. You can see the seam here of where it was sewn in. And then let's say this one, this is an exposed core. So that means that the core material and the core topper fabric are something totally separate that is sewn on top of this backer material here and this top cotton fabric. So I have experienced myself and heard that there is benefits to either. The one thing I will say about the exposed core is that some people, they like it because when their flow is heavy and it comes out, they feel like this here, this edge kind of stops it from leaking onto the wings. I personally don't have a very heavy flow, so I feel like when this happens to me, I have noticed that it does catch it, but I also notice that there's a little bit of you can feel this here, you know, because it's exposed, you have a little bit of like a lip. And so sometimes I'm just picky, you know, it just depends on the day, and so I like this hidden core because it's flat. So that's good too to think about, you know, whether you want a hidden core or whether you want something that's exposed. So real quick, I think something that's worth noting, I know today's video is about cloth pads and the questions that revolve around picking out the right one, but I will mention really quick the accessories that you can use. So these are what would be called an accessory, and this is a cloth pad wrapper. So this is something that you would use to carry your soiled or your clean cloth pad, maybe when you're out and about at the store, you know, at a family's house, or just however you want to transport them, clean or soiled. Maybe you can put a clean one in here and then just kind of throw it into your purse so you have one ready to go, and then you can kind of switch them out. So that is what that looks like. That's a cloth pad wrapper. And then also a wet bag. This is huge. This is an 11 by 10 inch wet bag, and it just has a zipper here at the top. And then when you open it up, it has PUL, which is a waterproof, really nice waterproof barrier, so that you can throw your soiled cloth pads in here and that you can keep them discreet and keep them all together until it's time to wash. So as far as where is to get your pads, what is the best place to find your pads? Should you buy the cheap ones off of Amazon? Should you go with maybe a handmade maker on Etsy? My suggestion is that you try a few different pads, like I said, from a few different makers. I like Etsy. It's easy to navigate. You can go on, you can read somebody's reviews, you can see what their shipping time is. You can maybe look and see more details. You know, they'll have a whole item detail of the description of the pad. That's not to say that groups on Facebook or places that you can buy them secondhand are not good, if that works for you, but personally, I like Etsy because I can return things really easy. I know that they're gonna be, you know, I can read the reviews and see the shop, and if they take really good pictures of all their product, then I know that things are being really well made and that the quality is really good, and the reviews are huge. Anytime I buy anything on Etsy, I always go to the reviews and see what other people are saying. Another thing that's really nice is the shipping time on Etsy. You know, a maker will put whether they have ready-made pads and what the shipping time is. So maybe it's 1 to 2 business days, maybe it's 2 to 7 business days. And so that's really nice because sometimes in the reviews, which another good reason to have reviews on Etsy is that it says it's going to ship in 1 to 2 business days. But then in the reviews, if there's any kind of constant review being left that, you know, it took 8 weeks to get my pad or it took 6 weeks, that's really important. And so it's really nice to know how quickly you're going to get your pad, because especially in today's age, I feel like with Amazon and just companies wanting to send things, you know, for free shipping over this amount and to get it to you really quickly, like it can be kind of impatient to know, like if you know I'm ordering this and they're going to make it for me and it could be up to 3 to 4 weeks. Okay, then you know and you're prepared for it. But if that says ready to ship and 1 to 2 business days, it's bad business to have it show up 6 to 8 weeks later. With that said, sometimes, you know, an emergency happens. We all have emergencies happen. Somebody gets sick. For some reason we had to shut the shop down for a little bit. And as long as the person is communicating with you, you know, through message and really keeping you in the loop as far as what's happening. But if this is a reoccurring thing, then it's probably, you know, you're going to have this problem every time that you order from them. What's also nice about Etsy is that you can message the seller. So you can message them and it's all kept together really well. So I hope that this question and answer was really helpful for you guys. If you guys have any further questions or want to see a video on maybe the different shapes of the pads, and maybe something like this where a pad comes with a core flap, if you guys want to see a video like that, I would love it if you would leave me a comment below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!